The Mike and Mario show. And what an interesting week to say the least. But we're here and lots of things worth touching on. But before we dive in any further, Mario, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm well. As I said, it's 5 o'clock here and it's already dark. It's a
Yeah.
bit damp and cold, but it's the time of the year. I was able to get a bit of golf in yesterday, but
Hmm.
no, everything's fine. And we're seeing that the U.S. Treasury, of course, is having difficulty issuing its debt. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and then I'll come back and comment because I used to actually be involved in these treasuries in the cash market before I joined. I started as a futures broker. I was a treasury broker. So,
Hmm.
and I can talk a little bit about what happened vis-a-vis the Chinese bank ICBC.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So for those who are joining us, definitely let's give it a second, make sure everybody gets a chance to plug in real time. And we're going to go through some of the headlines, some things that caught our attention, share our 2 cents on it. And then what we're going to do for the Q&A portion, something we've never done before, but give you a chance for those who are interested in joining us face to face to share your thoughts, ideas, suggestions, as well as offer, some questions or whatnot in the comment section. Figured it'd be a good way to meet face to face with some of the viewers or whatnot and hang out a little bit and see where we can go with this. But hope everyone is doing well. Hit that thumbs up button, show your support for the channels, and then we're gonna jump right in and just talk about what's happening, man. Because I think it's very telling. But yesterday, of course, Mario, you're going to talk further about this. But this headline here caught my attention, just because I think this is probably the most important subject of this week. On top of the gives us some foresight into what we can expect for the future, and it has everything to do with the debt and the possible lack of interest in our debt based upon the deficits we're running and everything in between. But then again, there was an auction yesterday, and there was a lack of bidders, international bidders, according to some of the information there. And so the question I wanted to put out there was like, what happens if no one shows up, internationally to buy our debt? How does that impact the current financial system that's dependent upon debt, and then ultimately our currency? So long story short, it's going to be a very rough ride ahead. But I think this type of events here is just the beginning of what we're going to see, because overall, there is not much value in debt, especially in an environment where it's being weaponized globally. So that's a little bit of my sense there. But Mario, when you saw this story, I guess, I'm sure it wasn't a surprise to you, but then again, what was your take on it?
Well, I have to admit, Zero Hedge is being a little bit dramatic because it
Dramatic.
wasn't catastrophic, the auction, because
Yeah.
you had something called the bid to cover ratio, which was still above 2, but it was the lowest in a couple of years. And
Hmm.
what that means is that let's say they were selling, I don't know how many billions they were selling. Let's say they're selling 10 billion and
Hmm.
there were 22 billion in bids. So the bids cover is 2.2. So there's still enough bids there to cover the whole 10 billion. What would be catastrophic, and this has happened before in Europe,
Hmm.
uh, in the German government bond years ago, is if you have a bid to cover less than 1, which means the treasury is trying to sell 10 billion and they only get 9 billion in bids. So
Right.
it's not that bad. The other thing to note is the tail of the auction. And what does that mean? Well, um, the longer the tail, it means that it's not very liquid, which means some
Hmm.
people are willing to buy that bond at let's say 4.8% yield, and some want like 5.2. So it's a very wide range of bids. If most of the bids are concentrated in at one yield, it means the
Hmm.
tail is short, and that means it's a healthy auction. And as for the foreigners, yes, foreigners weren't that interested, but I think eventually the U.S. Treasury will have to depend more and more on this domestic investors, and the
Hmm.
way they're going to do that is, unfortunately, they're going to have to offer higher yields, and
Hmm.
that's why I don't think the bear market in bonds is over. And
Right.
we spoke about this before we came on, that in the short end, like in the bills and stuff, yields are above 5%. And that's draining a lot of capital away from corporate bonds, which could create a recession in the US. It could create a credit crunch. And the reason that's happening is because the government doesn't care. The government needs to keep financing itself. It doesn't care if it creates a recession, as long as Uncle Sam can keep having his hits.
His cake and eat it too. Yeah, his
Yeah,
continuous dosages.
yeah, and the other thing as well, this is the way they refinance all the debts that come due, is by
Mhm.
issuing more debt. And I think you showed me a chart as well, if you want to bring it up,
Yeah.
about the debt interest has reached over $1 trillion.
Yeah, let me grab that chart here. So where am I at? There we go. Here. So yeah, and that's U.S. debt interest rockets past 1 cool trillion a year, and so the graph is a different graph here, but this is a primary story where this is just the beginning. This is just beginning of where it's heading. On top of the environment, Federal Jerome Powell talking about inflation is not where it should be. We still might need to continue. So he's still basically very hawkish on the fact that they might continue to try to raise in the midst of all this crises. And therefore, I'm sure that causes more lack of confidence in our debt issuance, given the fact that 1 trillion is already unsustainable. But one thing I noticed real quick, Mario, is during these looking at who showed up, it says, bank dealers were the force to step up and take the balance. So the bank dealers, aren't those the same institutions, i.e. the banks that have been backstopped and by being supported with the BTFPF, emergency fund, escape release valve. So
Yeah.
can this type of cycle continue for some time now if the banks step in as the primary dealers because they're backed up by the Fed, ultimately speaking?
Yeah, I mean, the primary dealers, they're the big New York banks, the
Hmm.
big international banks. You can find them on the New York Fed website. They're primary
Okay.
dealers, so they had to step in. And I guess that probably doesn't help the reverse repo either. And
Hmm.
the thing with these dealers, they'll take the issuance, but then they'll get rid of it. They'll probably sell it in the market, and that's why we saw yields go higher yesterday, because they don't want to hold it. And the BTFP, I think the people who are using that are more of the regional, smaller banks. So I
Hmm.
think that's different. But as we talked about it, though, that BTFP fund seems to have jumped up a little bit, which is a sign that there's some banks in trouble. And we're saying, if you and I did this kind of malarkey, accounting like the Fed does with these banks, we'd be in jail. The Fed's basically saying to banks who have assets that have lost half their value, they're saying, "Oh, don't worry, we'll provide you with the difference. You can value that asset at 100 cents to the dollar." So yeah, that's another sign here. This could get worse.
Hmm.
It could go higher if we see a continued credit crunch, as we spoke about as well. That's starting to happen. Corporations are not being able to borrow very cheaply because the government is crowding out the whole credit market.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that's just the article you're referring to here. Investors pull record sums from corporate bond ETFs as lending rates soar. Uh, so here we have, just more of the scramble right now of, people literally trying to get a hold of their funds to put them into things that produce and then take less risk. And so you mentioned talking about, people crowd into the T-bills right now just because it's short term. And so the question is with that, BTF chart I just showed a minute ago, as of right now, it's continuing to spike up incrementally. But given the fact that I think the major banks, too big to fail banks, I think their losses as of right now was around 650 billion or so when you add them all up. And so is there a
Yeah.
probability? Is there a probability that 650 billion that's mentioned with the too big to fail banks that somehow, some way, like will that eventually fall onto this program that they've created, which could literally lead to a like a complete rocket shot type of trajectory? You think?
Well, I think the 650 billion, that's for the whole U.S. banking system, and it
Okay.
probably does include the too big to fail. But it's possible, yeah, it could impact the too big to fail, and that would be pretty catastrophic, in my opinion, because it means that the smaller banks would have no one to come and save them, like a J.P. Morgan or something. And maybe that's why Jamie Dimon and some other bank executives are, Jamie Dimon's supposed to sell 1 million
Mhm.
shares next year. If I were him, I'd start selling it already. But
Yeah, but
he
he
wants.
can't.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
why? Yeah.
I'm saying I don't think he can, but just for the sheer sake of overall market confidence, like if they see him literally
Yeah,
getting rid of
yeah,
millions or damn near
yeah. I
a
saw
total.
Larry Fink just got rid of $10 million worth of BlackRock as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
So I remember doing a video. I'm sure you talked about it as well. How I think it was 2 years, no, 2 years during 22 last year. I think how Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, all those guys were literally getting out, ultimately at the top of their own companies. Just as I said, take some chips off the table. And so it looks like it's the bankers' turn now to take some chips off the table, given the fact that they're anticipating some type of correction or change coming soon. So that would definitely impact the overall health of the banking sector. And so, literally, everything in reference to this debt fiasco is pointing back to the banks. Therefore, the risk falls on the depositors, as always. And so, just something that people should definitely be aware of. And I think nowadays, like never before, having as least amount of exposure to those very questionable entities is crucial. But then here's another thing. You sent me an article about the issue they had in Australia, where cash became king in the short term as the telecom industry went down and people were literally scrambling for cash. Let me find that article. Where can I find it at? US. Let me see. Give me 1 second here. Where'd it go? Here we go. Okay, here we go. So put this on the screen here. Aussie telco blackout chaos proves cash stills remain king. And so when the power goes out, internet is not functioning properly or something like that, then what do people do? And unfortunately, majority of people don't have just disposable cash sitting handy in case of emergency. So it's that give or take. You don't want to be all in cash. You definitely want to be solely in government debt. You want to have your metals, but having an equal balance of comfort and protection is all. Yeah, these are the days we're living in, man.
yeah, the other reason why I wouldn't want to be, I'm not financing the government, i.e., buying treasuries or gilts, which is the UK equivalent, is because I don't want to finance them. I don't
Mhm.
approve of their actions, what they're doing, what they have been doing for decades.
Yeah.
So, and I know that some people don't look at it like that. But that's why I think having a sound money system where a gold and silver are money would probably stop this crazy spending, because there would be a limit to how much they could borrow. Because under a gold standard or a silver standard, if they borrow too much, rates go through the roof. But under this fiat currency system, we can see that the central bank will manipulate the bond market for the government, and they can keep borrowing despite the fact that we're almost at 130% of GDP in the US in terms of the national debt, and it's growing by trillions every year.
Yeah. Yeah. And we mentioned this before we went on air, but we're talking about how Jerome Powell and his efforts to, I guess, contain, maintain, or keep the narrative that they're in control is not done yet. So here's just a headline: Powell says Fed is not confident it has done enough to bring inflation down. So what's the chance that, of course, everyone is anticipating some type of pivot, but then again, they're saying that not enough has been done. I'm assuming referring to the fact that another interest rate hike or two might be on the table, or a prolonged pause before they actually have to pivot is underway. But what's the chance that they'll be able to stick to their narrative before either something gives, something breaks, or something happens in the form of some type of crises that forces them to have to make some real tough decisions? What are you thinking?
Well, there's definitely a chance of a crisis that it would give them the excuse to print again. And I don't think Powell really knows what inflation is.
Mm.
I think 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, he was testifying in Congress, and someone asked, all this money you printed, isn't that inflationary? And he said, oh no, that is not inflationary. But if you look at M2 or even M1, it has come off from the
Mhm.
top last year. But if you compare the M1 now, and even M2 to prior to 2020, we're still higher. So the only way to bring down inflation is to basically bring the money supply back down to pre-2020 levels. But if he really were to do that, the whole thing would collapse. The whole world would financial monetary system would be like a war zone. And what he means by inflation, of course, are these doctored consumer price numbers and personal consumption PCE numbers that the Fed
Yeah.
looks at, and they use the Krugman. CPI, which is basically they strip out everything and there's no inflation. Inflation, right? Krugman said, "Oh, if you take out energy, housing, and all the important things, inflation is actually hasn't gone up." So I don't expect um, prices or the dollar or any currency to appreciate in purchasing power in the
Mhm.
next year, 2, 3, or 5 years. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah, and I think that sentiment is also shared with Frank Gustra
Yeah.
uh, in this video clip here of him talking about just looking at looking at currency's devaluation in comparison to gold, and it's a clear sign that things are definitely, as he says, they're unraveling. So, uh, very
Well,
wise man to pay attention to. Go ahead.
it looks like I don't know if you saw that. I sent you something
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Jay Powell is kind of losing his cool with the climate change people. That was quite
yeah,
funny.
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, I thought I had it on the screen. So here's the little Frank Gustra
Yeah,
video,
no, yeah, you could play
and then
that.
let me find you talk about that JP or the TikTok. Let me.
Yeah, that was quite
Yeah.
funny.
Climate change interrupted. Yeah. I don't know if you can I don't know if you guys can hear it if I play it, but he was very, very potty mouth, very, very potty mouth.
Yeah,
At first, so either he literally losing his cool or it's just
yeah.
hard to maintain that the act of like,
Well,
being able to control everything.
one positive is that maybe he's lost his cool at the climate change people. So that would be good because he knows it's SCAM. I don't want to say it here. Uh,
Right.
which so that's a good thing. Or maybe he's worried about other things and he's just like, yeah, he used the F word, didn't he?
Yeah.
Close,
Now,
close, close the effing door so they can't get in.
initially, remember, I think it was maybe 2, 3 years old, 2, 3 years ago, after all the madness ensued, that the politicians were trying to incorporate climate change under the Federal Reserve's mandate. They were trying to throw that in there as if people would fall for it, and so clearly that's something that I feel that printing more currency can't really solve. So they decided to back away from that.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, let's go get to a couple more articles here. Here is another interesting headline about Russia's viewpoint, possible viewpoint on what might be coming here in the U.S. Says U.S. will run out of paper to print dollars on. This has come out of Kremlin from one of their financial ministers or whatnot. But so it's very telling how, amongst all this craziness, the whole Ukraine-Russia situation doesn't get any airplay anymore. And there's been more talk on this side how I think even CNN did a report saying how Ukraine was losing and it didn't look favorable for Ukraine. So now they're trying to play up that narrative of needing to, I guess, either back away from Ukraine bit by bit, because now Israel and Gaza has our full attention with support financially. So, like Russia, I haven't followed much of their economy, but I imagine they're not doing as bad as the Western media
Yeah.
wanted us to believe throughout the last 2 years of this military,
Yeah. I mean,
confusion taking place.
by now, Russia should have collapsed and Putin should have been dead.
Right.
So that comment about there not being enough paper to print dollars, of course, that is a joke
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
nowadays, the M1 money supply, I think it's 16 trillion or something, which is huge.
Mhm.
But most of that is in bank deposits, is digital.
Digital.
There's
Yeah.
very little actual cash. But I think they're just like how can I say they're dissing the US, isn't it? Is that the word? They're
Right.
just
Right. Just poking fun at
yeah,
us, like
poking fun at and I
right,
think
literally.
they have a point, because the West pokes fun at Russia. They say it's
Mhm.
a car, like a gas station,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that even though it's a pretty cultured, well developed country, a lot of history and tradition.
Yeah.
So I guess, you got to be able to take it. Um, the good with the bad when you start having a go
Right.
at people.
And since all this madness started off, to me, having done more research on Russia, they appear to be a very self-sustaining country, having more than enough territory to produce and to manufacture everything they need to sustain themselves without Western help, which has been key for them. And they've ramped up all their bilateral trade deals and all the agreements and stuff with China and Russia and all that stuff like that. So, yeah, clearly, they got exposed for lying. So, but I thought that was just something worth mentioning. What else we got here? Let's get to here's another issue as well from a little headline that caught my attention, talking about a possible Arab Springs 2.0 over food. And so it says, Grow Intelligence head warns global food crisis much worse in 2008. And so basically, it's this young lady here speaking about how, because of the current economic conditions, currencies in other nations are literally failing right now, causing the consumer price for food to go through the roof. And so it says here, Banker said Syria food inflation is up 2,000%, 1,200% in
Yeah,
Lebanon, and 700% in
yeah.
Argentina.
I don't like
And
that
so,
term, food inflation. It's not
yeah,
the food that is inflating; it's the currency that is inflating,
the
and
price,
it
yes.
doesn't buy anything anymore. And I think it's going to happen, unfortunately, in the U.S., UK, and
Mhm.
Europe. I heard the price of a Big Mac meal is like, I don't know, quite a lot now.
Yeah,
So, w- you know,
too dang much. And so, and on top of that, to eat, I mean, it's one thing to have something close to real food, but then to have processed food that you can put on a shelf for a week and come back to it and it still looks the same, and yeah, it doesn't lose taste or smell, nothing like
yeah,
that. That's interesting. And then
yeah.
here's a little. Go ahead.
When
Go
you
ahead.
go to restaurants here too as well, I remember starters used to be like 4 to 5 or 6 pounds for a good starter. Now
Mhm.
it's like 12 to 15 pounds. So, if you're gonna have a go to a good restaurant and have some wine, it's gonna be over 100 pounds easily.
Right.
You and your wife or your husband, two
So
people.
a family to feed a family of four. I've watched the entire bill go up, tremendously, and on top of that, the quality of the food and the service is not representative of any of that cost. So it's forced me to dial back a lot as much as I can. But here's an interesting graph here from Wall Street Silver. It says everything is fine. It says searches for the cost of groceries is now at an all-time high, both in the U.S. and worldwide. So people going online looking for solutions or answers as to why the cost of groceries is going up is trending up. And so that would ultimately will lead people to realize that it's because of monetary and fiscal policy at some point, which could also be good for those who want to protect and preserve some of their current
Yeah,
fiat purchasing
unfortunately.
power. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, the mainstream and the they'll be telling people, "Oh, it's because of this." We had
Yeah.
this geopolitical crisis because oil prices are going to go up.
Mhm.
And oil prices don't cause inflation; they're just a consequence. The real problem is all the money printing, and I'm afraid this food crisis, yeah, that could be kicking off already in some of the countries that don't have good currencies.
Mhm.
And we're lucky in the West still that our currencies are heavily manipulated against gold and silver, and that kind of maintains their values.
Yeah.
But I think with the BRICS and BRICS Plus from next year, those countries have a lot of natural resources and
Mhm.
agricultural commodities. Uh, I think the next time there's a crisis and the central banks in the West, go brrr,
Mhm.
uh, those commodities are going to go through the roof in our fiat currencies. And then we
Mhm.
will have a food crisis too. Not that we already don't. I mean, I read about a lot of people here in the UK. They're having to give up eating, uh, 3 meals a day so that their children can eat.
Mhm.
And they have to keep the heating off for most of the day, or else they can't afford to buy food. So it's
Yeah.
still
Wow.
pretty bad.
Yeah, like so, like stories like that, man, really touch home because I imagine, especially in the developed world, UK, US, beyond, that we've had more than enough for quite some time. So to see people over their head in debt with the credit card all time highs and foreclosures on homes, and I mean, I just like it. Just man, it makes me really appreciative of like having not, I guess, bit into that or drunk the Kool-Aid to where I'm overly indebted to where I can't provide the bare necessities for life and for the family. That's where I'm like, man, very concerning to say the
Yeah, I
least.
think
But
here in the
go ahead.
UK, the last time things were as bad was in the 1970s. I wasn't here in the 1970s, but my wife grew up here in the 70s, and she said that it wasn't as easy. A lot of times her mom used to make the bread herself because it was cheaper and
Mhm.
easier. You know, so and I think that was a result of all the years of like austerity here after World War II, and the pound going down a lot when it lost its reserve status. So
Yeah,
the 1970 was like I think it's something that the U.S. might experience. There are a lot of people who don't think the dollar will ever lose its major reserve status, but I think it's happening right now as we speak.
yeah, yeah. And so how you like, or you continue to remind yourself as well as others, the true definition of inflation. As far as we got the new modernized version of it, and we have the historical, school of Austrian economics definition of it. Completely two different definitions, which is very confusing if you don't know how to distinguish between the two. I also look at the word dollar. Like I try to remind myself that not all dollars are created equal. And of course, I refer to the Federal Reserve note being the primary instrument we all use in comparison to, like, say for example, I got a Morgan Peace dollar here, which is
Yeah.
also a dollar, but then this thing here issued in
No,
1923
well, wait,
cost
wait. The
huh,
Federal Reserve note is an imposter.
correct. It's a receipt,
That's
debt instrument, or whatever.
yeah. What the Morgan dollar is a real dollar.
Correct. So these are two. They both got the word dollar on them, but then one is, we all know, is a problem. The other one has been. This thing is 100. It's 100 years old. It got a heck of a story to tell, and it cost me what, $30 or whatever, as a because of the contents of it. So just as a side note, all dollars are not created equal. So the USD will be around, whatever digital form or whatever. The paper might be here still, but then ultimately the things that go click clack is what
Yeah.
you probably want to make sure you
Well,
are possessor of.
that's why your channel is called Rethinking the Dollar, right?
Correct. I try to get back to that. That's how it all started. But I've strayed so far away from it these days. Somebody said it's a counterfeit, 100%. And if people
Well,
knew that,
yeah. Well, it's like an empty promise. I went to dinner with my wife last week,
mhm,
and we gave our coats at the front desk, and they gave us a ticket with a number.
mhm.
When we leave, coat, and then I didn't expect to go and give them the ticket, and they were gonna say, oh, we don't have your coat, but here's another ticket. I would complain. I want my coat,
We'll
and
give
that
you interest. We'll give you interest on your coat.
yeah, the Federal Reserve note is basically that, and the thing
Oh
is,
goodness.
they create all these major crises, World War One, the Great Depression, World War Two, 9/11, and now COVID and whatever next they bring. And
Yeah,
people are so afraid and like so desperate that they'll take anything they'll give them, and I think that's why people still accept these how can I say, I owe you nothing promissory notes.
yeah,
You might as well, I might as well write a note and pay someone.
yeah.
The only
But think
problem
about this.
yeah.
It's unfortunate. It's the inherent, potentially the inherent nature of man to see an opportunity, whether it's right or wrong. That's where your moral compass comes into play. But if you got a chance to give somebody a piece of paper and put a legal backing behind it, enforceable by law, and then we're gonna add tax, we're gonna tax you on top of that. How over time it can
Oh
just
yeah.
become a manipulated tool to where it's like, I mean, they don't know no better. Why not print a couple more, give it to them,
Oh,
and then take it back from them on taxes and inflation? So,
and
um,
then yeah, those are the guys from Jekyll Island, right? And then they take those fraudulent currency and they buy up all the media, they buy up all the they endow all the universities. They
Mhm.
endow everything, and they brainwash people into believing that the color of money is green, but
Right.
no, the color of money is yellow and silver. Yellow and white.
Yeah, but that's one of the benefits of having done this for so long, man, is that people who are tuned in know. Now it's a matter of reaching people who don't know, as long as we got time
Yeah.
to do such. And so that's why it's important for everybody here. If you find value from the content that we share it with other people, man. Get them something to
Yeah,
think about. So
share it, because YouTube, they don't want to push this kind of content.
right.
If they did, we'd have millions of subscribers.
But one thing they are pushing, and people I follow, I noticed because I watch their numbers, they don't mind pushing a Bitcoin channel. You put Bitcoin Mario in front of your channel, I bet your views go up.
Yeah.
Bitcoin Mike.
I'm not gonna do that.
I understand. I understand. So, what we at? We have about 30 minutes. So, today, as I mentioned when we first started off, about giving everybody a chance to participate. And so, what we want to do and have done before is, if you have a question, thought, an idea, you want to share it, I want to offer you a chance to join us in the next couple of minutes or so for some face-to-face activity. Make it quick, simple, and sweet. Love to meet you directly via camera and get some thoughts and ideas. So, I'm going to share a link.
I see
So,
that
if you guys,
low blood pressure says you can, Mario, you can max all credit cards and buy silver.
he is, yeah, he is
I think
the
he's the biggest holder of silver in the Western Hemisphere. Low blood pressure.
exactly. He maxed out a credit card, get another credit card to pay that off, then max. So yeah, he has a system going there. Yeah, so hopefully it works out well from him. But all right, so let's get to the Q&A side of things. So feel free to ask questions, thoughts, ideas, put in the chat, or click the link that you guys see in the chat. It gives you a chance to join us face to face, and you can join us, share some thoughts. So feel free to have at it, and let's get some back and forth going. And so if you guys have topics that we didn't touch on briefly, bring it to the fold so we can all stay plugged in. What are you seeing in your neck of the woods? Yada yada. You know how it goes. And highlight at Manico64 or at RTD so it stands out. So makes it easier.
Oh, someone
Let me
asked here, John Knox, about copper. Yeah, I think copper is good as well. The only thing with copper is that you have to get big amounts. I do have a copper kilo bar on my shelf, but I think copper is a good thing to have too.
Yeah, it's just like I love my unique custom made copper rounds. So I got a couple of those just for souvenir sake. But it'll take a lot of copper. It'll take a lot of copper to maintain the purchasing power that a single ounce of gold would, and definitely I say about 100 silver eagles. So question? No, well I'm not, because I heard somebody the other day talking about an ideal ratio for somebody just getting started. Like how much actual silver would you recommend in comparison to if they could afford gold? But we'll get to that in 1 second. Let's get we got someone joining us here. Let me get him on the screen here. There you go. Where you go? I had him on here. Where did he go? Hide from stream. Let me get him on. Let me change the viewpoint so it can show up better. There we go. Mr. So this is Mr. Low Blood Pressure. LBP, it says you got an unstable connection. How you doing, my friend? Oh, I can hear you, but it's choppy on the screen. But what's your thought, or give me your 1-2 strategy for maxing out those cards the way that you say you do, or whatever question you had.
You get one credit card, 0% anyone else, and just keep the credit card. Thanks for telling them.
Ah,
Money for
LBP, I don't mean to stop you, but your connection is unstable. It says unstable, so you're talking very computerized.
How about now? Is that better?
That's a lot better. Go ahead.
Okay, just real quick, I'll get off. How are they keeping these rates so low? The 10 years keeps going back down. It touches 5, it goes down to 4.5. How are they doing this?
Well, I think a couple of weeks ago, Janet Yellen said that they're going to sell less of those bonds and buy more of the and issue more of the short-term bonds. I think that's how they got the market to turn around and buy those. It's just more manipulation. So yeah, it's kind of a Operation Twist almost. They're saying, we're going to issue more short term. We don't want to put too much pressure on the long end. But yesterday, with that 30-year auction, they had problems. So can you imagine if rates were still even a little higher? But even Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink think rates are going to go probably to 7%. So and I think they're right. I will agree with them for once.
Right, that's a great question, LBP. And then also, like, if rates actually go that high, and if people aren't showing up right now, then what? Like, do people still have interest in the short-term T bills? Then, like, will they see? And if they're not issuing as much, then what? Like, then where do they go? How do maintain, the illusion that the markets are still debt markets are still healthy? So that's going to be the next, I guess, question we'll run into. Or they may have another, banking event in China that, is the reason for them not being able to get the things going. Anyway, what else? Let me see any questions out there. I'm curious to, get a chance to meet some people face to face. So if you're interested and courageous enough, feel free to join us for a quick second and share a thought or idea, whatever. What else? Let me see. So Mario, see if you see any questions out there.
Yeah, there's a spammer there, but
a spammer. I can do away with spammers. Let me.
Where is Janadu?
Yeah, let me. Can I get rid of that one? I can get rid of it on my side, but I can't get rid of it. Yes, I can. So yeah, I think I got rid of it on my side. I think.
A question here from Who's a Jew? Oh, my goodness, I read that.
Where are you at?
It says RTD, does any retirement plan, i.e. 401k or pension that has any equity left? So he's asking if it's got any equity left. Well, it depends what, your retirement and your pension is invested in, and yeah, it's becoming a problem here in the UK as well. I saw that the BBC, they have what they call defined benefit pension, and they have almost a £2 billion hole in it because they promised the pensioners like a certain amount, and and they index it to inflation, and then inflation goes up, they can't fund it. So yeah, it's a problem. I think pensions are going to be a big problem.
Yeah. Those promises of 7%, they've made adjustments since, or should have made adjustments since then, but they haven't. Question from Mario: thoughts on First Majestic stock?
Yeah, I have some First Majestic. It got really hit hard, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I think they're all like a lot of the silver miners are getting hit hard, and even the gold miners. I hold some of it, but I keep my mining stocks. It's all about how much risk you want to take. But yeah, it looks like dirt cheap, First Majestic.
Yeah,
but it's
one of the things
we've been saying that for the last 2 years, though. So
yeah, I think one of the things that's going to help First Majestic out is that I think at beginning of this year or in Q4, which now or Q1 next year, they're announcing their bullion store. Like they're actually open up a physical store on top of what they do online. So that definitely should help overall valuation of the company.
I think they had some results a couple of weeks ago, and they lost quite a bit of money. Yeah, and it doesn't help. The silver price is so low, and costs for producing are probably not going any lower. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why eventually silver will go a lot higher, because it's not just First Majestic, but they're also keeping a lot of capital outside of the mining sector, and there's less and less projects being developed, and so there's going to be less and less silver in the future, even though there's still a lot of demand for silver, especially in China.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as this debt issue with the U.S. is exposed more as a problem internationally, we're going to have, come January 1st, the BRICS basically adding those 6 additional countries in that are all heavy oil magnets. So they're going to have a cartel over oil officially. And then I think the gold Shanghai, separation from the prices of gold and silver will definitely be exposed come next year. So beginning of 2024 could be very interesting on a lot of fronts. What else we got here? Nice. I couldn't hold beat gold. So not many questions. My silver auction. I don't see many questions. See a lot of back and forth about 401ks. It looks like, but it looks like we didn't have any other apart from LBP. Any brave souls want to join us face to face? It's unfortunate. So I'm gonna kind of try to concoct an idea to get more participation. We'll do a giveaway or something next week, Mario. Well, it's the best questions or something like that. Get an ounce or two. How about that?
Ounce or two of copper.
Yeah, you get an ounce to gold, a 20 stack of copper, or I'll give you I'll shave off some gold and give it to you.
An ounce of silver, I guess, is reasonable.
Bet we'll work on that one. That sounds fun. Says question: I have enough gold and silver to pay my mortgage off, but what would you do? Great question. Everybody want to touch on that? I know my first thought.
Well, you go ahead.
All right, my first thought is anything denominated in fiat currency at this current moment, depending on your overall financial situation, I wouldn't be in a rush to pay off anything because over time, I think it's one of the real estate guys I follow who came up with a very good thesis at as a result of inflation, we anticipated being higher for longer. So if you're able to maintain your income with no problems, it gets cheaper for you to hold on to that debt as long as you can sustain it. But then again, the purchasing power that's going to be absorbed through gold and silver, we're not going to have a number at the end of the day, possibly. So I wouldn't depart with it unless, I had something that I was willing to cash out. That'd be my thought.
Yeah, I wouldn't sell gold and silver as well. What I try to do is if you're able to pay off your mortgage as much as possible with extra fiat that you get, I think that's a good idea. But if it's a small mortgage in relative terms, then just hold on to it, I guess, because it's going to become worth less and less as long as you're comfortable that you can keep servicing it, because that's really important.
All right. So we got another guest joining us here. Another additional we got a third leg coming in. We got Mr. Paul T. If we can get him on here. Mr. Paul T, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Can you see me?
I saw you with your dog a moment ago, but it looks like you turned the camera around or choppy signal says.
Hold on.
And so,
hold on.
So from that accent, I can tell that you're not from Michigan.
No.
Oh, there you go. That's better.
Firstly, I wanted to say hello to Mario and hello from Rosie.
Hi, Rosie.
We're great fans. We are great fans. Mario, what's going to happen to gold? I know it's destruction of fiat currency, right? And how fast is this thing going to collapse? When do you think gold will have its day? And what do you think of the risks of confiscation in the States and in UK particularly would be my interest.
Yeah,
So,
I think, we get frustrated a lot with what happens in the gold market. But if you look at it longer term, gold has averaged almost 10% a year in pounds since the year 2000. So keep that in mind. And in dollars, about 9%. Gold should be a lot higher, i.e. the currency should be a lot lower, especially in dollars. I think if we break 20. Oh,
I think we get the feedback from your side. Let me not on his side, but let me.
I think 2100 is the key level. If we break through, there's 3 old highs there, then it's going to fly. And how quickly, it's difficult to say, but it could be the next crisis where they have to print even more currency. So I hope that. Questions.
Yeah. Paul T, did I do you?
Well, Mario, we're great fans, both of you actually, and Clive, and just Be lovely to meet you in person one day, but thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you for joining us.
Okay.
Yeah, good stuff there, man. That was very nice. Now I was trying to bring up the sterling pound in gold terms, but I didn't get a chance to get it in
Yeah,
time.
it's
But
around 1600. I mean, when I started buying gold in 2002, it was about 220 pounds. So it has done well. It's just that a lot of people expect gold always to be going up, all the time, and it doesn't. We have the ups and downs, and I think you just need a lot of patience. It's not it's not like a speculative investment. It's just safe and sound and steady.
yeah, and so I did actually find it. So here's over the last 10 years, and so 5 years. So anyway, go. If you've been holding for quite some time, you've ridden the roller coaster ride, but ultimately the wave's going to take you up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, go
Right.
back 20 years and you'll see how
20,
much
20, 20.
up there.
Here's 20. Yeah. So it's been 20. So
Look at that. I mean, is you can't complain about that performance.
yeah, not at all. Not at all. But then again, what 1%, maybe 2% of the population have known the importance of holding on to this type of money for this type of time period here. So yeah, if you have been, you're part of an elite few. Literally, you're part of the 1%er club. What else you got here? Matthew says BTC guys and go late next year. So it's everybody can kind of see that on a wall that they're setting things up for the crypto space to do it quite well beforehand because they can't have gold and silver get away from them, unfortunately. So that gives you more time. Look at it that way. What else we got here? Here is Mario. It says, following on Mario, what is your opinion on gold bullion and UK pensions, i.e. SIPP, SIPs?
Well, I think if you have, money in your pension in a SIP and you can't get it out, that is a good thing to do to SIP it. And gold investments hopefully will be able to do that. There are other companies that do it right now. So what they do is your SIP provider will work with a bullion dealer, and they'll store the gold, real physical gold, for you as a SIP. And the other thing I would say is, maybe try to save besides your pension and just buy it for yourself. Some sovereigns and some Britannias.
Yeah, be your own banker. Be your own central banker. Here's a question from Kearney. Says, can brokerages fail? Can they take our stocks? Can they take our stocks?
Definitely,
They
definitely.
got counterparty risk. That's for sure.
And the brokerages, you see, they're not banks. So if you have cash with them, that cash is probably being held by JP Morgan or some other bank. Of course, they can fail, and they can take everything that you have from it. And sometimes they reorganize. There is a bankruptcy, but it takes months or years to get your assets. So brokerages are not safer than banks.
Yeah, here is from Hannah. Says, Mike, please elaborate on your thoughts about BTC rising. And so I've been saying this for quite some time that the crypto space is and has been used and will be used as an escape hatch or a incubator to kind of contain a lot of that hyperinflationary currency that's going to be created. So I would imagine they want that to pump harder and faster because it gives more people a way of staying in the digital realm rather than going backwards into gold and silver. So BTC is the first of its kind in reference to what's been given to us. So it's going to pump just because they're selling it to the public as a new option, financially speaking. So people are going to be lured in no matter what. So until there's a vulnerability or something like that in the code, it's going to rise. And because it has the properties of money, which is the scarcity side. So that's what makes people attracted to it. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, they've I think it's just a lot of people won't agree with me, and I looked into Bitcoin years ago, and I even was involved a bit in that market, but they've made it so that the young people who know about the fraudulent nature of fiat currency, they've learned everything about sound money, but instead of going to gold and silver, they go into Bitcoin. So I think there's an agenda there. Like you said, is an escape valve for the powers that be. Eventually, yeah, a lot of people already have made a lot of money in Bitcoin, and they will probably again, but there will be a point where Bitcoin will probably go, it's going to crash completely. And but gold and silver have never really crashed over thousands of years, and that's just my personal view. I'm not saying you shouldn't do Bitcoin or other cryptos. Just be aware that it's very volatile.
Right. And it's the idea that it's not something tangible. And that's one of the downfalls is software. So ultimately software, and I also say anything created by man can be disrupted by man. So it's just software. So don't hang your whole life on software or for that matter, anything in the real world other than God. But that's still a side note there. What else? Let me see here. I don't see a lot of questions, but I enjoy having, the two people join us, Marwy. So we're going to open it up more often.
Yeah.
And
that was a good thing to do.
So I'm gonna work on that giveaway for next week. We're gonna get more participation and put some weight in people's hands. How about that?
Yeah.
So we'll start a little a fund to support the communities.
We could create a crypto M&M crypto coin.
M&M token. We're gonna do an airdrop next week. Oh my goodness, having fun, man. Dutch Libertarian says, question for Mike: do you have other preparation for the coming reset besides gold and silver, grow food, water filter, and other? Yes, I do. So I try to be prepared as much as I can according to the little bit of knowledge God has given me. And so every area of my life that I enjoy today, I try to look ahead and see what I can get some of and just buy a little bit extra of it. And so got stockpiles of food, ammunition. I mean, everything that man would want to protect and preserve himself, I do have. And on a side note, this is something that might be an option for people if you are interested. And so, just literally within the last 48 hours, I got a water machine that creates water out of the air. It's kind of like a humidifier. So it's called CaraPure. And it's this is not endorsement, but this is just something I think can be a viable option since somebody mentioned it. But it's a machine here. It's a glorified humidifier that produces water out the air. And so it's drinkable water. It's bad. It's bad, but so that's something that will be available to people as well. So that's another way of just being prepared. So
pretty
but I got the water filtration. Yeah, so I was one of the early backers, so I didn't pay that price, but this thing now keeps selling out. So it's like they are going fast, so it could be an option for some if it's something of interest, but just putting you on game for those that are interested. So, but that's just one of many ways that people can, provide for themselves.
Yeah, I personally, I don't profess to be like a prepper or, I do it through stacking gold and silver. I think, that will help me get through if when things get bad. The other thing I think you need to have friends and be in touch with your local community and people around where you live. I think that's a good thing as well in a hyperinflation or a collapse.
Yeah, I do agree. And that's where like the whole idea, I never considered myself a prepper until stuff hit the fan 3 years ago, where toilet paper, like well before all that stuff happened, I remember just, seeing how things were shifting and saw the wave of doom and gloom coming from the east, from China to Iran, and seeing people falling out on the streets. I'm like, oh, damn, let me go to Costco and stack up just in case. And so from that, I'm like, dog, let me just have a little bit more on reserves. And then also good YouTuber, Alaska Prepper, had him on the show a couple of times, and he was talking about, calories, being prepared, like having a calorie reserves. I'm like, damn, I never thought about having calories on the shelf in your cupboard just in case. I'm like, well, damn, let me go and get some calories on reserve. So just, little practical things that you take for granted, given the fact we have everything at our fingertips until we don't. So anyway, I'll rant forever. All right, people, we about almost an hour, man. But it's just been a very fun live stream. Hope you guys got some value from this information shared, and trying to get you guys involved more. So feel free. Next week, we're going to do some more things that's special for you guys. So definitely tune in, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you'll be notified. And Mario, any thoughts to part with? Any good news, bad news, any words of wisdom that you might want to drop on us? I love put you on the spot.
Well, yeah, I mean, just tune off as much as possible from the mainstream media, from all the stories, political, geopolitical, yeah, and just try to live your life, and because that drains a lot of energy from you, I think. Of course, you know, you will probably hear about what's going on, but just try to not let it bother you. You know, you can't really do anything about it except, you know, the best you can do is be a good person, you know, and do your best, and yeah, that's
Right.
all I have to. That's what I think.
Words of wisdom on a Friday afternoon for me, early evening for you. All right, my good people. As always, it's been great hanging out with you. As always, man, have a great weekend. Stay blessed, stay prayed up, and enjoy life, man, while you still got it. And we'll see you next week. Peace.